Ryan Rebalkin, you are NCO of Her Majesty's Royal Canadian Navy. You are a media mogul. You are producer and host of a plethora of podcasts, chiefly amongst them the Stallone Podcast Network, Going the Distance, the Rocky Series podcast, and something called The Worst of the Best Podcast, which you keep plugging that nobody seems to want to listen to. You also host several YouTube channels to concept your podcasts, and an additional one we've recently discovered, which is Welp. Here we are on YouTube. So what other gems are out there that nobody has ever listened to? Please tell us.
Well,
what did I miss?
Nothing. It's a pleasure to be here, Sicco. I'm honored that you invited me on the inaugural debut episode of your podcast, a part of this last of the Action Heroes Podcast Network.
Exactly. We are popping my cherry today.
I'm happy I could be there for that, to witness popping. So, Sicco, who are you? Why do you think you have the talent, the ability, and the gumption to be a podcast host and to tackle the topic of Mel Gibson?
Well, frankly, I don't. So this is pretty much an experiment.
You don't shy from criticism either, and you will take the hits as well as you get them out. I know it comes from a place of love. You started listening to, was it my podcast, Going the Distance, at the very beginning, or was it Slycast?
No.
Who was the first podcast?
No, I'm a diehard Slycast guy. I've been with the Slycast. Actually, on the current episode, they just popped up. There's actually the first email I sent them. I'm even more brutal than you were on the episode you guys did on Over the Top. You know, well, it's the Stallone middle years. What can we say?
So we can thank Craig. The fact that you and I are talking, you're on the network feed, ultimately we can thank or blame Craig from Slycast for your existence. People have already seen the name of your podcast or seen it now in the feed. They've punched it up. Why Mel Gibson?
First and foremost, I figured I'd be an original and do something nobody's done before, which is cover Mel Gibson, who I think is fascinating. I'm a big fan of Mel. I think he's great, and I think he's an amazing artist. So that's worth delving into. We also know he has a ton of awards. He was the king of Hollywood at some point. Why not a podcast about that guy?
Perfect. There are probably people who are hesitant, though they're fans of Mel, to do a Mel podcast because they feel that any kind of praise you would put on him because of some things that he's said. You've got the timeline.
Well, we are going to talk about all that.
Okay.
And here's the thing. I didn't say all that shit. Mel said it. He paid the price for it. So what, as a fan or as a listener or viewer or what have you, what are you so worried about? That it will somehow rub off on you because you're a fan of Mel, you suddenly hate Jews and you want to beat your wife up and whatever else was in the media? Especially, what if any of that is true? Has he been convicted of anything? Has he gone to jail for stuff? No, he hasn't. Well, he's been punished by Hollywood. But, you know, a lot of people get punished by Hollywood who don't deserve it. So,
no,
who knows?
I'm with you on that, and I do agree, and I love Mel too, and I wouldn't agree to come on the episode or have a Mel Gibson podcast on the feed. Has he made mistakes? Have I made mistakes? I'm grateful everything I've said in my life has been recorded and broadcast. I don't know how many people can honestly say who have lived their life on this planet can say that they are comfortable with every conversation they've ever had to not be public.
Yeah. And what if something gets spotlighted and used as a media product?
Yeah, that's
which pretty much happened to him.
Yeah.
He had an alcohol problem, which is not something you want to happen to yourself. And here's the interesting part. It seemed like he was the kind of guy that something like that wouldn't have happened to. Because we all know the famous story of how he helped Robert Downey Jr. Mel picked him up, dusted him off, gave him a job. And here we have the MCU, which is pretty much built by Robert Downey Jr. We wouldn't have had that if there had been no Mel, and if Mel hadn't been, you know, the man that he was, and said some stuff to him. And when researching Mel, I came across this award show, and I was like, what's this? So I turn it on. It's Robert Downey Jr. He's handing out an award. He starts talking about Mel Gibson. And he's basically saying, well, I'm here because of Mel. And Mel told me, if you're going to get through this, it's like hugging the cactus. And then a light bulb went off in my head. I was like, hey, I'm going to do a podcast about Mel Gibson, and it's going to be called Hugging the Cactus. Because if you love Mel Gibson, you have to love him warts and all. That means you're hugging a cactus because there's some stuff. Well, what can we say? And it's And it's a lot more than just, stuff he's reviled for in the media. He's an interesting guy.
Well said. Very well said. I couldn't agree more. And I want to make it clear by, again, talking about Mel and saying that, we've all said and done stupid things. I'm not condoning some of the things he says, saying, well, that's just, someone being human. I'm just saying we're all human. And we've all said and done stupid things. I'm just not a celebrity. Despite your intro about me, I have nobody cares about anything.
You're a podcast celebrity.
Oh boy,
live with it, Ryan.
I'm nobody. Trust me, we know this. You'll see the stats soon enough when you join the feed. But that being said, we're very excited to have you here, and I'm excited to talk about Mel, talk about the warts and all, because the all is really what we're going to focus on this on the Mel Gibson podcast. I think.
Yes, we are, and I made you watch Mad Max, didn't I? Yes. What did you think?
We're rolling into the Mad Max discussion? Overall?
We are rolling. Well, of course we are.
Okay, here we go. So
that's why we're all here.
Now, I don't remember the last time I saw both Mad Max 1 and 2. I know I have seen it because there was a couple scenes that came out in my brain. I was like, oh yeah, that scene. Or oh yeah, that moment. So the first Mad Max Part 1, I think my parents rented when I was a child, because I recall there's only two.
What age? What age are we talking? How old was little Ryan?
Well, the film came out in 1979. Now, I was 4 when it was officially released, but we would have not rented it as a family till we were able to, we rented VCRs when I was a kid. We didn't own one until I was 14, so we were renting VCRs at whatever the local video store. So you'd rent the VCR and then you'd rent the tapes. And it was like a whole deal. It was I remember not being cheap to rent tapes and the actual machine. So you brought the machine home in a big suitcase and you'd hook it up to your TV.
Yeah, they were huge.
Yeah.
You had to rent the entire VHS machine. That's true. I remember those.
You used to rent.
Actually, the first ones were Betamax, as I recall.
They were. And so VHS, because they were expensive when they first came out, they were $2,015 to $2,000 back in the day, which is, with inflation, it's like $4,000 today. It's insane, yeah.
Because remember what was before VHS? Remember that? You had those projection wheels.
Yeah, right, of course. We had them in school classrooms with the school films. They show these school. Yeah.
That was brutal.
Yeah. Basically, it was like a movie theater in your home, because that's what, movies would have, the big scrolls or big film reels, and that's what you have in your home. Yeah.
Yep.
So I would have been probably, I would say, between 8 and 10. So it would have been between 83 and 85.
Okay.
And I don't know if my parents let us watch the whole thing or if they were in the room. So if my mom's listening to this episode, this is not a criticism of your parenting. It's just back in the 80s. I don't know how much modern of the, here's a movie, put it on. It looks like a fun action movie for the boys. Of course, there's that opening scene with the two lovebirds.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing.
No, it's good.
Well, look here, little Ryan.
Yeah.
Do you see that girl? What she's called the town pump.
Yeah.
And the reason she's called the town pump is because everybody pumps her. Yes. And now she's about to be raped by a biker gang. The justice system is not going to do anything about it, just for that very reason, because nobody will testify for her and nobody will even report this crime.
That's exactly what happened.
That's why the nice police officer is so angry.
So the first time I saw it, I was young, and I recall that there was some nudity at the beginning, but though it's through like a telescope or binoculars, so it's, you barely see anything. But I remember being young thinking...
The idiot cops.
Yeah, I remember thinking, boy, what are those two people doing? I had no real concept. I just knew they were adults with no clothes on. And then the next scene that I remember in my young brain, that now with an adult brain...
The kid in the road.
The little kid
foreshadowing.
In the road. Yeah, so the kid in the road. Now, before the scene played out, I couldn't remember if the kid got hit or not. So that's how long it's been.
Yeah.
I almost thought the kid got run over. I remember feeling that way when I was a child. So the feeling was that the kid got run over. That's the fear I must have had as a kid when I saw this film.
Yeah.
So adult Ryan didn't remember. So that's how long it's been. So it might have been 40 years since I've seen this film, or 38 years.
There's a lot of details you forget about this movie, and which is kind of interesting because I don't know if you've seen the Saw movies, or at least one of them.
I've seen probably the first 1 to 5, or whatever it is. Yeah.
Okay, well, so the ending of Mad Max, spoilers, people, and this movie is how many years old? There's no such thing as spoilers before the year 2000, in my opinion. The ending of Mad Max is the plot to Saw.
Explain.
He handcuffs the bad guy to an exploding car and gives him a saw, and basically says, well, you could probably saw through your cuffs but take you about 5 minutes, or you can saw through your arm and take you maybe 30 seconds, and maybe you'll get lucky. That's Saw.
It is, and I missed that.
It is.
I don't know how I missed that.
Irony, of course, is that there's no original movie ever. Everybody just steals from everybody. And that's been basically what they've been saying about Miller. Yeah, well, this scene he took from Lawrence of Arabia, and this scene he took. Of course he did. Miller and Kennedy, who are the directors, co-directors, they had never done a movie before, ever. This was their first project. Miller was a doctor, and he was like an EMT, and he would like drive up and down the roads of New South Wales in Australia. And so a lot of these car crashes, a lot of the gore and the stuff you see, it's just shit they would see on their route on a daily basis. The only reason the apocalypse concept is there is basically because they had so little money. They figured, well, if we set it into the future, that would kind of explain away a lot of stuff we don't have in our movie, because they wanted to make a completely different movie from what they eventually shot, which is interesting. That's pretty much, you're setting yourself up for failure. You're setting yourself up to make a ton of mistakes. And what happens every time when you do that is you basically set yourself up for originality, because that's what mistakes are. The only original thing you can do as a human being. You can make a mistake. That's usually something other people have done, but sometimes it's something only you can do. It built an entire genre in terms of apocalyptic movies, but also it revolutionized car chase movies. This movie did a lot, and it made money.
It did make money.
Yeah, and it cost $60,000 to make, and they made $10 million.
That's insane. That's great. It kind of reminds me of the magic that was caught with Rocky. Now, Rocky's not the same genre of film, but the same guerrilla-like filmmaking. Movie studios didn't have a faith in it. There was mistakes that were made during the filming that they put into the film that actually enhanced the film. Independent filmmaking is unique because you can't recapture the independence once you're successful. Mad Max, for better or worse, and Rocky, for better or for worse, became successful, and subsequent films are challenged by their own success. And I think Mad Max falls in that same category as all independent films who somehow form a franchise, and very few of these actually form franchises that are independent films. So Mad Max and Rocky are very similar, that they're done in the 70s, done with a low budget, done with no-name actors, done with practically no-name directors. The studio doesn't have faith in this. They don't have the budget to do things that they want to do. Like, they actually had ideas that they wanted to do, but they don't have the budget. So how do we work around this creatively? We have to work around the lack of budget, which actually, in a weird way, makes it more original and makes it more unique, and a better story is being told, because they have to be creative with their lack of budget.
And it's interesting because if you look at the movies that came out of the 70s, all of them, even the big budget ones, they all share the same characteristics. Because if you look at, say, the worst big budget movie made in the 70s, which is Apocalypse Now, it went so ridiculously over budget, basically because you had the same kind of director. You had an auteur director. You had a director with a vision, with a really sharp idea of what he wanted, and he was shaping everything and everyone to fit his vision. And that's pretty much, if you look at 70s filmmaking, that's what that is. And that's what Miller pretty much wanted. It's like, okay, I have this idea. I want to get into filmmaking. I'm just going to do it. Rocky worked the same way. So you had Stallone, somehow sold the concept. They had a great director. I mean, let's face facts. There would be no Rocky without that great director. Because all the subsequent movies Stallone directed, they're not that hot. Yes, they're well directed. He's competent. And yes, the fights look good. And yes, he does some great shooting. I mean, you were talking about that Stallone documentary where he talks about the editing and everything. All I see is a guy who is a good cinematographer, who has a good eye, who has a good idea of, well, this is the story that we want to tell. I don't think he's a great director.
No, I don't think he's that strong. Not to get on the Stallone podcast, but yeah, I agree. Mad Max, I'm going to tell you right now, I loved both films, but I was surprised about how much I enjoyed this film. I was surprised.
Yes, I'm surprised by that too.
Yeah, because you told me, because I said, hey, we should do, Mad Max should be a standalone episode. And the format of your show is a little bit different than the other ones on the feed, which I like. So you're more of, we're discussing the films, we're not going into great detail at the film, we're talking about behind the scenes stuff, or just our feelings on the films, talk with Mel mixed in with the discussion. I like that. I like how
you talk about it thematically.
That's true.
You're looking into the story of the scenes, whereas if you're just discussing a movie scene by scene by scene by scene, that's not how it's supposed to be watched. They are moving pictures. Not, hey, let's look at this picture and overanalyze it and pick it apart and let it die. Because that's what happens when you look at stuff too long.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to look at stuff too long, especially these movies, because back then there was no video, there was no streaming service. You just watched that movie. If you were lucky, it'd be on TV maybe 2-3 years down the road.
Yeah.
Because that's pretty much my story. It's like I was aware of Mad Max. I was just too young to see it. That's a cool story. My parents divorced young. My mom was hot. She started dating again. What this is leading up to is that's how I got the Mad Max poster. What happens is mommy brings over the new guy. Look, here's your new daddy. And I'd be, at that point, after the third or fourth or fifth one, I'd be fairly cynical about the whole deal. It's like, yeah, well, we'll see, you know. And they'd be all enthusiastic about, you know, showing what a good dad they are and how they'd be my buddy, et cetera, et cetera. And I'd be like, yeah, sure. What's in it for me? So there's this one guy who said, listen, what's your thing? And I'm like, what do you mean, what's my thing? What do you like? Well, I like Star Wars. He says, you know what? I'll get you something cool. So he shows up. He says, I got you something cool. He hands me like this roll, this big, thick roll of movie posters. Well, that shut me up for good. You know, he could do whatever he wanted to my mom after that. He could even stay over and make weird noises. I was cool with that because I had my posters. So I sold my mom out. I sold it down the river. I had like this big stack of posters. Now, most of that stuff in that stack sucked. And I mean sucked. I mean, we're talking the poster to Love Story or some other Kramer versus Kramer, you know. But there was one in there. That was the original Mad Max poster. Now, not the one that was on the video rental, where you see him with the shotgun and the glasses and the helmet. No, it was the other one. It's always the bike cop, by the way.
Yeah, I found it surprising too. I was like, no,
it's actually not surprising because the guy who played Goose was actually the lead of the movie. Pretty much sold the concept based on his lead. Point Mel was a complete unknown, and this guy had done some stuff. So it's like, look, we got this guy, because pretty much that's how they would sell movies. It's like, okay, we have these storyboards. Look at the artwork. This is what it's going to look like. Give us money. This was like a really low budget affair. So they would like scratch and claw to get money from anybody, anywhere. And, you know, Australia wasn't really rich back then. So there wasn't really a lot of faith in you know, indie movie making and what you're going to make a movie in Australia. Look, they make movies in Hong Kong and they make movies in Hollywood. That's where movies are made, not in Australia. Okay. So, but somehow he got some cash together and he got that through that poster because it shows Goose like standing and pointing at something. And then you have like, you've seen a lot of those 70s posters with a lot of stuff going on in the background. And so I was like always on the lookout to see this movie. It wasn't on TV. And I could never understand why it wasn't on TV because it was like really violent. That's why.
But it's not.
Then the whole, no, but it's for the time it was.
Yeah, but it's weird.
For the time you did. I mean, yes, there was nudity, but there was never rape.
Off screen. It was off screen.
Yeah, well, you had rape in exploitation movies. Last House on the Left, you know, Cannibal Holocaust, another awful piece of shit. Yeah, which is the same thing. It's just some guy, hey, let's take a camera, let's go in the jungle, let's film you getting raped by a tribe of native people and then eaten and stuff like that. And let's pretend it's real. And they were insane.
Yeah.
So I saw this movie years later, and I actually saw it after Mad Max 2.
Mm-hmm. You're like a lot of people.
An even bigger letdown.
Yeah. A lot of people saw Mad Max 2 or The Road Warrior first. North Americans especially. I can't speak for Europe fans, but I know that also seemed to be the narrative that Mad Max 2 wasn't a sequel, so to speak. It was almost like a remake, kind of like Evil Dead 2. Is that really a sequel to Evil?
But it's like, hey, we have some real money now. Let's do it again.
Yeah, and I think there's a little bit of that with Mad Max 2. But it is a sequel. It's a legit sequel. They even do like...
They tie it in.
They do tie it in. They do a little montage at the beginning to say what's happened. Time has passed. I mean, I don't...
What ties in both movies, and obviously we're already letting the cat out of the bag. We are going to talk about Mad Max 2. And that Mad Max 2 is actually sort of kind of a semi-soft sequel, soft reboot, whatever you want to call it by modern terms. Basically, they realized the power of this movie is really that it's kind of set into this bleak future. It's the anti-Star Trek. If you look at what Star Trek is, and if you look at what Mad Max is, there's actually an online community that like discusses this vehemently. There are Reddits like dedicated to this stuff. It's like there's the Star Trek version of what the future of mankind will be, and then there's the Mad Max version of what mankind will be. There's something to be said for both of them, which is a very interesting discussion. And the Mad Max part is, well, it doesn't look too good for us, does it?
Yeah, this is good food for thought. You posed this question to me to think about when watching the film, and some things did speak to me more today than maybe they would have in 1979 when the film was even made. It saddens me a little bit that the world, in my eyes, at least the thought process of how to fix problems, seems to be heading towards a Mad Max type mentality. Now, I don't know if we'll ever, wear armor, underwear, and have the idea
assless chaps.
Yeah, assless chaps. However, there is a sense of, I hate the term lawlessness. That's not what I'm getting at, but panic. And sometimes when we have panic, we make poor choices. Let's just say, like, for example, when COVID first hit, people were panic buying, at least in Canada and the U.S. Toilet paper. There was this
toilet paper.
Did you hear about this? Was this an issue?
Yes, this was an issue everywhere.
Okay. I couldn't remember if it was worldwide or if it was just on Canadian.
Oh, thing went viral.
Okay.
It was like this one guy getting toilet paper. Well, everybody started thinking, wait a minute.
Why is he doing it?
What if there's no more toilet paper?
So speaking to the Mad Max, of course, fuel.
And that's what Mad Max is. There's no more fuel.
There's no more fuel.
Which is,
but it's interesting
realistic.
to see the panic. So you think of just toilet paper, and people were like panicking, panic buying, and then there was fights that broke out. People were hoarding. Now you're stockpiling. Now you're setting up a guard outside your shed where you're holding. You see, this is kind of what the rollout. We could have toilet paper rolls. This is the rollout of chaos that society can create by everyone just take a deep breath, calm down. We actually have enough resources. If everyone would just stop panicking and stop fighting and just listen to reason. And unfortunately, you see the public freak out videos on YouTube, whatever, of people on airplanes freaking out or at the stores. It's just like not everyone, but we see a lot of behavior of people like, why are you freaking out? And then talk about the fuel. Before I forget, I got to say this. So we had a storm here in British Columbia, Canada, a couple months back, and it was a real big storm. It was a weather flooding and rain, heavy rain, which caused flooding. Roads were literally. It was one of the biggest natural disasters that British Columbia has had, and since I've been here my whole life, so a long time. Like actual highways were washed out because of this. Yes, transport of goods was delayed and or canceled, and we also live on an island. I live on an island called Vancouver Island, and so things were like fuel was rationed for a time, and people were panic buying fuel because they were hearing that fuel might not be coming to the island or being transported across the province. And so people were lining up for hours to get fuel. This was real. This was actually happening. And a lot of people were like, hey, everyone stop. Because people would be filling up their jerry cans, not just their cars. And this is the hoarding process. This is the panic buying. So people were saying, if you just bought what you always bought, then things will work themselves out. But because everyone's panic buying, you're also now increasing the depletion of the fuel quicker than is necessary. Now people who just want to go to work can't go to work. And people, if they can't go to work, they don't get their pay. They can't pay their rent or their mortgage. And people get angry, and people then get their pitchforks. It's scary. I guess what I'm getting at is I'm seeing how quickly people can turn on each other for their resources. See the realism
of Mad Max here.
Yes, you do. You do see it. Now, am I going to wear assless chaps? Probably not.
You never know.
Well, for 46, they're okay, but I don't think anyone's going to want to see them.
Well, before you know it, you're on a chain, and you've got assless chaps on, and you're working on your mohawk.
So it's a little bit disheartening to see that after, this movie came out 43 years ago. We seem to be closer to that more than I would like. Now, we've made great advancements in medicine, food production, hopefully human behavior. But at the same time, we've also seen an increase of not that with people's behavior. So there is, I think what I'm getting is we have Star Trek people. And we have Mad Max. So we're seeing both. Because I'm a Star Trek, but I feel like I'm living around a bunch of Mad Max personality.
Yeah, what can I say? I always was a Star Trek person, but I'm starting to be more of an Alien and Mad Max person now.
Well, you are very resourceful.
If you know what I mean.
Yes, I understand. And I understand that in the Netherlands, where you're from, there was a big issue, a big riot. It was
like everywhere. Media everywhere is controlled. So we don't get to see what's happening in Austria. We don't get to see what's happening in Australia. Not really. I mean, there are protests everywhere. This stuff is happening everywhere.
There's protests in Canada.
We don't see that stuff. We have no idea.
Cannot say certain things because I'm a military member, so I basically not allowed to comment on or say.
Well, you swore loyalty to the Queen, so that's not stuff you can just take for granted.
No, it's not. She pays the bills. But that being said, no, what I'm saying is there's unrest. There's people that are confused. I think that's a big part of it. And again, that confusion causes the panic, which causes the unrest. At the end of the day, if everyone just told the truth and nothing but the truth of what's going on, we could actually work things out, whatever the solution might be, whatever the disaster might be. But I feel like there's a lot of misinformation. And I feel like whether it's intentional or not, or what the reasons are, I don't know. But why is it we're so confused? Like, I'm not a stupid person. You're not a stupid person. Why can't we just get the information that we need to get? And then let's work on the solution, whatever that solution is, whatever the problem is. It's okay. We can do it together.
Did you ever play the video game Civilization?
Yes, I've played a few of those. I'm not very good at them, but I understand the concept.
It had a sequel, which was because the guy who originated it was Sid Meier, and he had Alpha Centauri, which was way ahead of his time. And there's this quote from that video game that has always stayed with me. Beware of he who would deny you access to information, because in his heart he dreams himself your master. I've been thinking a lot about that quote lately.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. And when you look at it in terms of Mad Max, there's this saying that, human beings are always 5 missed meals away from eating each other.
Okay.
There's a thin layer of civilization. Right below that is people clawing and scratching to get food and get whatever they want. So we're in a very interesting time in our lives. Then when you look at the 70s, it was also a very interesting time because this was right after the oil crisis. Now, how much of the oil crisis did Canada suffer?
I don't.
We had it bad.
Did
you know what caused the oil crisis?
I don't remember.
Have you ever heard of the Yom Kippur War?
No, I don't know if I'm familiar with the war, to be honest with you.
Okay, well, Israel had to fight a lot of wars because their Arab neighbors didn't like them very much. So there was this famous Yom Kippur War where all of Israel's neighbors basically sneak attacked them during a national holiday. Now, what happened was Israel was, of course, allied, and we were Israel's ally, one of them. So we basically supported them militarily. We gave them rockets. We gave them all kinds of stuff. The Arab nations, after they lost, they avenged themselves by denying the countries that had supported Israel fuel. So they cut off our supply. We had to economize, and we had basically, that was the 70s. There was this huge economic downturn based on scarcity of resources. And that is pretty much the basis of Mad Max, which is basically a country, not just a recession, but, going into chaos because there's no more fuel. You see it in the movie where they're hijacking a truck. They're actually climbing the truck, a fuel truck, and they're funneling off gas. So the bike gang will have gas to get whatever they want. Because the bike gang in the original Mad Max, they're just a nuisance, really. But the police are underfunded and the justice system isn't really working anymore. And so here you have a situation where a small group of very violent people can basically have their way. That's the juxtaposition to Mad Max 2, where there's been a world war. There's probably been some nuclear devastation. Everything's in the dumps now. Now you don't really have society. You don't have civilization anymore. All you have are the weak and the strong.
And I'll say why I love Mel, because I love Mel. So I think Mel is a better filmmaker, and he probably has a greater understanding of how to make quality films. From Apocalyptico, sorry, I said that probably wrong, but you know the one I'm talking about. Incredible looking film that he directed.
You're the English native speaker. You tell me.
I don't know, man. You speak English better than I do. You talk. You talk English better than me. Well,
it's discombobulating that you say that.
Yeah, discombobulating. I taught you a word, or at least I gave you a definition of a word. I felt proud of myself giving you that definition without looking it up. I first became aware of Mel probably because of the Lethal Weapon movies. I think I would have been a teenager. Now, had you asked me when I was 13, 14, when I first saw Lethal Weapon Part 1, I probably would have told you, yeah, he was Mad Max. I think everyone knew Beyond the Thunderdome. I think I recognized that Mel had done the Mad Max series. I saw them at some point when I was younger, but I became a Mel fan because of Lethal Weapon. And
interesting. I became a Mel fan because of Mad Max 2.
Okay.
Immediately.
There you go.
Right away. I was big on Max. I was like, this is my guy.
And can we say how handsome he is in Mad Max 1? Well, he's a handsome older man today. Like, he's a good-looking guy. He's kept himself well. He's in good shape. He's just one of those guys who's aged well. He doesn't, as far as I can tell, he hasn't done any plastic to his face or anything. Aging naturally like a Clint Eastwood. He's got the green.
And I'm very jealous of his really full natural beard. Have you seen that big Santa Claus beard he has?
I love it.
Isn't that amazing?
I can't grow a beard. I can't grow that.
I mean, he gives Kurt Russell a run for his money in terms of beard.
I probably have watched, I would say 90% of it. So there's a few of his later films I haven't seen yet, but I do enjoy his.
It's also because they're not heavily marketed anymore for obvious reasons.
Yeah, he's been.
Because he pissed off the marketing people.
Right. Now,
who were probably Jewish.
He did direct, well, it's true. And he did direct Hacksaw Ridge, which made good waves at the box office. And
it's amazing.
Yeah. Again, he's the director of that film. I think sometimes we forget that film is directed by Mel.
And don't worry, dear listeners, we will be covering Hacksaw Ridge in detail.
Yeah. Again, his on-screen charisma, acting, the way he is, you get the little bit of crazy Mel in every movie that he's in, because I think every actor has a little bit of themselves in every role. That's just what makes them human. According
to the director, in terms of a lot of Max fleshed out because of Mel Gibson.
Okay.
Because what he brought to the part, the choices he made, the things he did, everybody on that project. I know the one thing you can't fault the original Mad Max for is the performances, because these were all classically trained actors. These were all people with a ton of experience, who were basically just waiting to do a movie. And they were in plays, they were on TV shows, and they finally get to do a movie. So there's like this plethora of talent. There's like this immense cast of people who are normally doing Shakespeare, who are now in this insane Mad Max movie trying to make chicken salad out of chicken shit, pretty much. And yeah, because really, if you look at the plot, there's nothing there. There's lawlessness, and the cops can't really do their job anymore, and there's a biker gang terrorizing everybody, and then he kills the wife of a cop, and he kills their kid, and Mad Max becomes Mad Max, goes crazy, kills the gang, that's it.
When that was introduced in the first Mad Max, I was stressed out because I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's his motivation for becoming mad.
Right, of course, but
which is a trope.
Being a parent myself, I know, but I get suckered into these storylines because I hate watching or knowing that a kid is going to die, right? You know, it's like, I'm just a softie, so I'm like, this wife and kid is going to die. And they didn't get killed until like the last 10 minutes of the movie, which...
Yes, but it's foreshadowed. And that's what you forgot.
To a degree, the fact that I forgot they existed told me that, right? I knew they were going to get off somehow. But as the movie progressed, we're like literally 3/4, 75 to 80% through this movie, and they're still alive. They keep getting away, and they drive away again. I'm like, oh my God.
And that's the difference between a 70s movie and an 80s movie.
Yes, they keep getting away.
If this was an 80s movie, the setup would be the wife and the kid get it in the first 10 minutes, and he spends 80 other minutes getting him bloody revenge. That would be an 80s movie.
This is why I love this movie, in the sense that I was surprised, even after
they built character.
Yes. Great acting by Mel.
Definitely.
He runs down the street, and you hear this guttural yell, and I love the shot. It's panned out. You don't even see the corpses, which is...
Yeah, you feel his pain.
Yeah. And I like
And then you feel his pain even more when they run him over.
Yes.
How realistic is that? And when he gets up, limps back to his car, and you always talk about, Stallone is this great physical actor. That is realistic. That's if your leg is messed up, that's how you get up.
He did great physical work in the Mad Max films, parts 1 and 2. And he was young, an unknown actor, and he gave it his all. And what I love about these early Mad Max films, too, is you're seeing that mischievous little glint in his eyes, smirk. But the physical acting's there. Boy, I was surprised at how much, again, I love these two films. Now, with Mad Max 2, what you did notice right away was, yes, the budget was increased. So we have a stronger budget. The film quality is more cinematic. The filters are stronger. It's more high-res. So already you can tell this is a better-looking film. But again, it turns out to be, what a fun ride.
Mad Max 2, or The Road Warrior, is a classic. It is probably one of the best action movies ever done. It's one of the first movies that had this kind of frenetic pace.
Yeah,
I mean, it really, if you look at other movies of its era,
it looks
how
incredible.
Fast this goes.
It looks incredible.
Yeah, and it's one of those movies that could never have been done anywhere but in Australia. because they had the look, they had the space for it, they had the cars. You see a certain sprezzatura in it.
Aesthetic?
It's alive.
Okay, aesthetic maybe?
It has a spark.
Oh,
and
okay.
You don't see that in a lot of the other genre movies. If you look at all the other apocalyptic movies, they're as grim as Mad Max 2 is. They're as desolate. And, they have a lot of similarities, but what they don't have is this spark. Mm-hmm. And that's what makes it so interesting. And there's a kind of Australian kind of element to it. I mean, not just the boomerang. There's a lot of typically Australian things in it that really make that movie work.
The car chases, and I'm not a big car guy. I don't know if I ever mentioned this before in some of my past episodes. I think I probably have, but there's not a lot of car action in the Rocky films. But I'm not cars don't excite me. Car chases in movies are boring. I find them boring in general. So when a car chase breaks out in an action film that I'm watching, whatever, from the Bourne Identity films to James Bond even, or Mission Impossible, is here we are watching a movie from 1979, and then in 1981, yep, the second film. I love the aesthetics and how these look, the filming, the low to the ground, even the kind of corny speeding up the film to make the cars go faster. But the stunt work and the way these desert car chases looked, with these old muscle cars and their crazy costumes. These were more fun, more entertaining, more thrilling than any Fast and Furious film put together. With all their CGI crap. Because there's no CGI. These are real stunt work. And they
did it for real.
This is dangerous. They were hitting each other at high speeds with their tires rubbing up against. I was stressed out because the guy, the second main bad guy with the mohawk, he was in the vehicle. There's no CGI face over his face.
That was him.
This guy's crazy. He was banging against the big rig in his car, and they're bouncing off each other, and they almost wiped out.
Now, as crazy as Australians are, the point where the two hostages get smashed into the truck, those aren't actually people. Those are just two melons bursting.
Okay, okay. Those aren't real people.
So, just because I know how squeamish you get about stuff like this.
Look, I'm not squeamish. I found it thrilling, and the action sequences enhanced the film. It didn't take away from the film. Whereas I find in other action films, when they do a car chase, I can go to the bathroom. I don't it's going to end. Yeah, the car chase will end with a big jump or what. Nothing surprises me anymore. But I'm watching a film that's 40 years old, and I'm surprised about how thrilling and how fun and how well filmed these amateur filmmakers are making these car chases look and feel, and they're stressful in a good way.
So there's this famous book which was written in the 50s. It's called The Hero with 1,000 Faces, and it's every hero story in every culture basically has the same tentpoles, basically has the same, they're all similar in many ways. They started writing Mad Max 2. They had that in mind. And according to Miller, they all adhere to the same basic hero principles. And so does Mad Max, with a twist. And here the 70s come back again, because Mad Max is not your average hero. Mad Max is not a do-gooder. Mad Max is a scumbag who's just out for himself. It's just, he wants to survive. He wants the gas. He needs to keep moving. There's no real reason why he's moving, because he's Mad Max. He's just out in the world, and there is no real world anymore. And he doesn't really know why he's going on. It's just he's basically on instinct. He's in survival mode. Because here's this guy who doesn't care anymore. You see him looking through binoculars, and he's watching a rape happen. He's not going to intervene. Maybe he probably sees that every day on the road. Mm-hmm. So all he's watching for is, do they have gas? Is there some way I can funnel gas out of their car? That's what he's thinking about. And then he starts to think, well, maybe if one of them is still alive, because he sees the fort they came out of, the entire movie, he's just out for himself. He's bartering for gas. He's bartering for another day in the wasteland. That turns him into a hero, an unwilling hero in many ways.
Oh, well said. Yeah. Me being egotistical North American, my brain forgot they were in Australia. So I was thinking, they're going to Canada, where it's a little bit milder climates, maybe, and a nicer people.
But that's the appeal of the movie.
They're going to Northern Australia, of course.
That's the appeal of the movie. Yeah. It could be anywhere.
Yeah, very good point.
I mean, sure, they have Aussie accents, and they look very Australian, and they act very Australian. Aside from that, it could be anywhere. It could be on the steppes of Russia. It could be in South America somewhere. People always talk about world building and how you should do more world building. And I think you should do a lot less of it, because less is more. And that's what Mad Max does. And that's what Mad Max 2 does. It's that they give you a little bit, they give you hints of what's going on, but they don't give you everything. Your mind, your imagination starts filling it in. Yeah. And that's the power of a really good movie.
Yeah, like I like.
Yeah, but your mind starts to supply reasons for why that would be the way it is, and why his behavior is the way it is, or why certain things have happened that way. Your mind does that. You don't actually have to see it on the screen, which was also the power of Star Wars. And because, that was a very flimsy movie, except it wasn't. Because look what it did to the minds of a generation of children.
Right. No, I like it. You asked if I felt they survived, that the guys who went north survived. Well, I think the movie answers that, though. It answers that question.
Yes, to an extent, but, let's say they get there. And, okay, so the feral kid is basically the narrator.
Right. So at least we know they survived to an older age, so that at least 50 years, 60 years, because it sounds like an old man
talking. How did they survive? Because the feral kid is the most violent of everybody.
Well, he isn't anymore. He was feral his formative years, but he was able to speak as he got older because he's the narrator in the movie, and he's the leader.
In an apocalyptic world.
He became the leader.
He becomes suddenly civilized. He's a lawyer now.
Well, stop it. He's not a lawyer, but he's living with other people who can speak and what have you. So he's raised, and you take him out of the atmosphere and environment.
Yeah, but he becomes the leader of the tribe.
Yes, he does become the leader.
Partially because he's been influenced by the Road Warrior. Right. Because in his childhood, he saw this guy that made him the man he's become.
I just hope he got a haircut and put on some pants. That's all So Mel becomes Mel, I think, after Mad Max 2. I think this is where he becomes the leading man. Would you argue this is where Mel becomes...
This put him on the map.
I don't know if part 1 did it.
For Australia, it certainly did.
Okay.
I mean, he was the guy in Australia. He got all the good parts after that. What you could do in Australia, he did. Yeah, but he was like, what was he, 23?
I think he's 23 with the first...
23 when he made Mad Max. He was right out of school. He was like, I think he went to drama school in Sydney. That's another interesting thing. He's educated, which you don't see a lot. His teenage years he spent in Australia. Have you been to Australia?
Yes.
So
it's got a beauty and a danger to it combined, yeah.
Been on a bender, and he'd been in a fight, and his face was all banged up. He just went with the guy who played Goose, and they just sort of cast him as, okay, well, he can play one of the bike guys or something, because he just looked cool with his messed up face. And then the next time they saw him, here shows up this beautiful 23-year-old man who's classically trained, who does plays, what's happening right here? It's like we have our leading man now. It gave them their movie.
In fact, getting back to Mad Max 1, when they showed Goose, I thought, I didn't realize he had like a partner that has a lot of screen time. So that makes more sense where they were leading towards Goose maybe being the leading actor in this film. Which
makes sense because, he's a very strong...
Great actor. Strong character. Yeah. And he did not take... It's like, we got some competition, Mel.
When you look at like his character in Mad Max 2, action from the word go.
Right. Yeah.
Because you don't have to, because you know who he is.
Yeah, the world building does
your mind can just fill in the blank. Your imagination does the rest. You can imagine why he's crazy. You can imagine why he's mad.
It's like that imagination thing. Sometimes less is more. And I think in some ways it kind of adds to the film a little bit by making it still kind of scary, creepy. We don't necessarily have to see everything. And the violence, though, implied, and some of it was still there, like the heads being smashed in when they get rammed into the rig. That was fun. That kind of stuff. I love that kind of stuff. But that's when that happened, it was more visceral and brutal. So, whoa, these guys just lost their heads. Where there wasn't a lot before. Going back to Mad Max 1, this is... I'm not trying to be crass here. That's not my point. But it took me a second to realize that the man, and this is very real, this is what makes it... It was kind of weird because it was a comedic moment. Yeah. The cops see this man running with his pants off, running away down the field. But you realize, I guess with the high def, I was like, he's got red on his bum, like makeup, obviously. But
they raped him.
They raped the guy. But
they raped him.
And the way it was filmed is probably one of my only criticisms, because these cops were looking at this guy. What's that guy doing? He's just running around crazy, But maybe
but that's the point. The cops are assholes.
Oh, okay.
They're assholes. They don't give a shit.
Yeah.
They don't care. They're just doing their job, and they want to do it as fast as possible so they could go home and have a beer. So it's just to them, they're just basically cleaning debris from the road.
And that's that implied violence I'm talking about. Like, thankfully, we don't have to see. Obviously, we don't have to watch as a viewer. And I know some movies do that. They show the rape scenes or violent sexual.
Yeah, but it's exploitation, basically.
Yeah, and I don't. Me personally, I don't need. I got the story beat. I understood. This poor couple was then that, but that's
yeah. I don't need it either. If I want to see sex, I'll watch porn.
Right, and we hopefully don't watch that type of porn, sexual assault porn. But there is that role playing porn out there. Anyway, so that being said,
with assless chaps, I'm sure.
Yeah, with assless chaps. What I liked is that you get that sense of, again, that world building, or you're filling in the gaps. This is a violent, scary world where rapes are just happening, and
it's just run in the mill, and it's not considered a big deal.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, so it is a dark movie in many ways, but it's also like it's almost with just a few minor edits. Like, I'm talking like just a few clips where you could just take out a couple little. You could show this movie to a 12-year-old, 10-year-old. Like, you could. Like, it's just I'm talking just a couple little edits, a couple little, like, you don't have to see the pantsless guy running in the field. Like, you just cut it up a little bit and you just have him running. I'm just saying there's scenes that are graphic in nature.
So I saw this when I was 8.
I did too. But I got kids.
It didn't make that much of an impression on me in terms of what happened.
We're 80s kids. We're 80s kids, though.
Yeah, we're 80s kids. I mean, we were living under the threat of the mushroom cloud.
Yeah, that's true.
To quote Queen. It's true. It's like, and that's what I think what drew me to Mad Max in the first place, is because this really is a kind of, well, more or less logical and realistic portrayal of what humanity will be like when society breaks down, when civilization is gone. We kill each other over table scraps, and feminism is gone. They're just basically slaves again.
Right.
Because that's what they portray. It's like the rape victim she has like this dog collar on, and she's probably been raped by the entire gang. How many guys was that? 12, 13, 14 guys? That's a busy day.
Yeah.
First thing you see is like you see her and you see like blood on her thighs.
Yeah.
So, it wasn't pleasant. The cop who handles the victim, to reassure her, he grabs her by the dog collar.
Right.
He grabs the dog collar to keep it tight so she won't run away. And then he walks around the car and is like, okay, I'm going to slowly drop the dog collar now. Stay where you are.
Right.
We'll take care of you. It says it with a tone that makes you think he doesn't really give a shit. In Mad Max 2, there aren't any cops anymore. The only cops you see are in the bike gang. Yeah. They're now with Lord Humongous, which is the main protagonist of Mad Max 2, which is like this big muscular guy with a hockey mask who speaks with a Swedish accent. I'll let all of you guys go if you just give us the gas. And of course, he says to his cronies, like, yeah, don't worry about it. We're going to kill all of them, which is what happens when society breaks down.
Would you say that Mad Max is a film series, the first of its kind, or at least the most popular, to show the dystopian future?
Maybe with the exception of Planet of the Apes.
Okay, right. Yeah, no, and that makes sense. So I don't know if there's another film that quite shows this dystopian future at this time it's been mimicked since. I don't know if it happened. It's
been mimicked since, but it hasn't been done like this.
Yeah.
And not done this well, definitely. Right. I mean, you've had TV shows that have, done this stuff. And the stories like that tap into, what if we lose society? What if we lose peace? What if we lose what we have?
Oh, hopefully that never happens.
Pretty much on the cusp of the fourth industrial revolution. So things are going to change. And a lot of things that are happening right now is because, the elites are jockeying for position to get on top of the new industry, which will be artificial intelligence.
Well, hopefully we get your podcast completed before all that chaos happens. Well, before we close, why don't you tell the listeners what they can expect from future episodes? What your game plan is? Because you told me, well, for example, other channels that have actors, for example, will cover almost any or all films of certain actors. You had a different goal in mind with Mel for the beginning.
Here we have an IMDb of 75 movies. Now, I could make 75 podcasts. I know Mel Gibson, the actor. I know Mel Gibson, the director, because I've seen all of his stuff. I love most of it. I want to find out, and not so much in terms of I want to find out the tricks of the magician, see how good this stuff really is. what I've noticed in doing the research so far, I've enjoyed even more knowing more about it. That's what this podcast will be about. And I just allow my guests to pick the movie. That's why you picked Mad Max. It's like I asked you.
Did I?
You did.
Oh, okay.
I asked you. It's like, okay, what's your favorite Mad Max? What's your favorite Mel movie? What do you want to do? And you were like, well, can I do Mad Max? Fine. You want to do Mad Max 2?
I think I probably picked the 2 because it's been so long, and I wanted to be on your first couple episodes. So maybe it was a selfish reason. I don't know.
You were going to be the first episode anyway. You're the boss.
Oh, I'm the boss. Yeah, I'm the boss.
We work our way down.
Oh, I'm nobody. I am nobody.
Yeah, see, that's his management skill.
Mm-hmm. This is a journey of Mel and his movies and a combination of both and the guests and what they have to say. So yeah, Mad Max will definitely be, I would assume. There's trivia and Wikipedia pages and Google and like anyone that wants to learn about the film, they can just Google it. We could have done that and we could have regurgitated to the listeners. And I like
but what's the point?
What's the point? So I hope that our listeners understand that if you want to know the beat by beats of the film, well, watch the film and then you'll have your own opinion. You won't even need us. But this is more of two people just talking about Mel and the film and what that means in real world stuff. I think we covered all that.
And what it means to us.
Yeah.
Movies like this affect you as a person. Yeah. They shape you in many ways.
Well said.
So that's very interesting.
Yeah. What's your next episode? Who's on next? What's your next movie?
I think it will be Doug Greenberg from The Rocky Minute, and we will be covering Braveheart.
Oh, yes. So I can't wait to hear that.
And Doug is really into it. I let him pick the movie, and he said, Braveheart. I was like, of course.
You guys are going to have a flex-off. Who has the bigger biceps between you and Doug?
Oh, that would be me.
Oh, wow. Okay, well, I need proof.
I have the titles to prove it.
See,
but I'm pretty sure Doug can out-wrestle me. He's a pretty good jiu-jitsu guy.
Yeah, he's got a heart of gold. We love Doug. Thank you so much, Sicco, for having me on. This has been a blast.